and welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Marvel Fan Theories podcast. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Katie, and we're two sisters and borderline obsessed Marvel fans who have been following the Marvel Cinematic Universe closely for years. And now we want to share our MCU discussions with you.
We chat about our own predictions and theories, plus some of our favorites from online, and our reactions to all of the Marvel content that's considered MCU canon, including the Disney Plus shows and the movies, as well as the Marvel news you need to know. All right, Marvel fans. It's opening weekend. You're now listening to this on a Sunday. It is the back half of opening weekend. That means the majority of you have probably already seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. In fact, if you haven't seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we're never going to say this, but stop listening right now because this is spoiler-filled. We're going to talk about everything in the movie, top to bottom, reactions, the good, the bad, the what we hope comes out of it. In fact, we're going to be doing 2 episodes on this movie because there is just so much to unpack. So, getting right into those reactions, Katie, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, okay. So, everybody knows, first off, I'm a big Scarlet Witch fan. We all knew this was a big moment. I think for the past 5 months, I was saying, and now I'm a huge Andrew Garfield Spider-Man fan, so that was big for me, but I've been saying, like, this is my Spider-Man, you know? Like, I was ready. I've been hyping this movie up like no other, because I was just, this is gonna be, it's Multiverse of Madness. That's the point. It's madness. It's crazy. It's gonna be big. And I was left, for the sake of WandaVision times, feeling underwhelmed. I was like, why do they keep doing this with everything that Elizabeth Olsen is in? Because she did a great job, and we will get into that, I'm sure, even more, and we will. I don't even know why I'm saying that. We will. But my roommates and I did a debrief, and actually our neighbors, one of them was talking to us as well, who had seen it last night, and we all were just like, we kept waiting for something to happen, and then it just kind of never did. Like, we kept building and building and building, and it was like, oh, when's the other shoe gonna drop? And then it just kind of didn't, and I like, the whole film, I was like, oh, I can't wait. What? Oh, like, I was like,
yeah.
I
think you actually put it really well when you said, like, you kept waiting for something that didn't happen, but you didn't quite know what it was.
Yeah.
That's, like, perfectly encapsulates, like, my experience. Like, I kept sitting there and I was like, okay, this is good, but it can be better. This is good, but it's gonna get better. This is good, but there's more to come. Yeah. And then, like, whatever I was expecting, like...
never did.
I know we're gonna get into the whole cameo conversation, but... it wasn't even about the cameos. It was like, I was waiting for more multiverse. I was waiting for more, I don't know. To your point, I can't even put my finger on it. I just wanted more than what I got.
We have decided, now I've been talking about this film nonstop since I've seen it, but not for like the right reasons, not for the hype of it, but because I've been having to figure out how I feel. And we've decided that as a standalone movie, it was fine. It was a good movie. Because, to be fair, both of my roommates are not quite as involved with Marvel Italy. I had to binge all of WandaVision with one of my roommates yesterday so that she was caught up. So they're not quite as involved with it, don't, have all of the background. So they initially were like, oh, I thought that was pretty good. And when the movie was ending, I just was like, it's kind of silent because I didn't. And I didn't almost want to say that because when you look at it as almost a standalone film, it's fine. It really is fine. But when you look at what it entailed and what the MCU, like relating it to other MCU things that it needs to be related to, even the first Doctor Strange, which I have a point about that we'll get into then, you're like, oh, this had problems. It was paced weirdly. It didn't really feel like there was a lot of cohesion going on. And there were just so many character plot lines added with the visual effects. Now, granted, those were amazing. I loved it. Thought it was great. But when you add 9,000 plot lines with all these wonky things going on and magic everywhere, it was getting confusing and hard to follow where we were going.
I was shell-shocked, and I tweeted this after the movie. I was like, I literally feel like I just had an out-of-body experience. Like, I was like, I don't even know, like, what I was experiencing going to this movie. I just was, like, strangely numb. I don't know. It, like, it just left me feeling so weird and, like, unfulfilled.
Yeah. Well, and I actually want to share this because I've said it to everybody I've been talking to about this. We were standing outside the theater as they were cleaning the theater, before the movie. And some guy walked past talking to his friend and he was like, there's no way this is going to be better than Spider-Man. And I looked at my roommates, I was like, no, there's no way it won't be better than Spider-Man. Then I walked out and I was like, oh no, Spider-Man was better.
Yeah.
Like, I felt better walking out of it. I felt complete walking out of it. I felt like I watched from A to Z an amazing film. Everything was explained perfectly. I got where we were at.
It was organized.
Yeah, I got what I was going in for, and I understood. And I think that's probably where we're going to head right from the get-go, are these trailers that we talked so much about because we had to. And the trailers spelled out the entire film.
Yes, but also at the same time, they lied so hard.
Yes.
Like, that was my first point when I took notes when I came home. I said the trailers were so misleading. They were the worst of any MCU movie. Not in quality-wise. Quality-wise, they were fine. They made me excited for the movie.
I agree. No, I agree.
But in terms of, I mean, that line that Wong says about, oh, you know, you connected the one that we quoted. You connected the multiverse. Never once says it.
No.
The whole idea of the desecration of reality was not actually directed towards Steven.
No.
I mean, it was, but not directly related to the events of No Way Home.
Yeah.
And so here we went in thinking...
Even Wanda's line had
we
less
went in
merit.
thinking that, you know, we went in thinking the movie was going to be a direct reaction to what Strange had done related to Peter Parker. And I think Spider-Man was mentioned, once? In the whole film?
And even then, it wasn't mentioned in the context that it had anything to... Yeah. Because I also argued with my roommates about that, where I was like, well, that doesn't actually prove that the spell or anything happened. Because he just said Spider-Man. He didn't mention any context to it. So it was like, us sitting there watching it after No Way Home. And actually, you know, we might as well get into this part too, since we're talking about trailers and this point. But us watching it after No Way Home... Like, we assume he's saying, oh, Spider-Man, because he only knows Spider-Man to be Spider-Man. But, I mean, he wouldn't be like, oh, yeah, we know Peter Parker.
Yeah.
You know? Like, that wouldn't have mattered anyway. But my biggest issue with the trailers, besides showing everything, was that misleading, because... For those of you who don't remember, this film was supposed to air before No Way Home. It was supposed to be directly before No Way Home. And it
directly
felt that way.
after WandaVision.
Yes, and it felt that way. It felt like it was supposed to be directly before No Way Home, not after. And the trailers made it feel like we were walking into this film, okay, we're gonna deal with the repercussions of the last movie we just watched, which was No Way Home. That made sense. The trailers made it make sense that way. And then the film never once addressed it. The multiverse was never once an issue in that way. And we will get further into the multiverse in our next reactions episode to this movie, but this movie had nothing to do with the repercussions as it was initially painted.
Which, to your point, made it function much better as a standalone film than within the universe itself, because I mean, not every Marvel movie that comes out has to be a direct reaction to the one previous.
Exactly.
Oftentimes, we're jumping franchises, you know, there might be little calls if something major happens, you know, but if you're gonna have a character that's in one film, then be in the next film, the events of the film prior should have had some measurable and visible effect on that new character, not necessarily new, but on that character that is in both films.
Yeah.
So it does not seem at all, or did not seem at all, like anything that happened in No Way Home was really affecting Steven, other than perhaps his subconscious penchant for wanting to protect America Chavez. That's it.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I know I even had said this to Taylor already. I was so shocked, and this goes with where it lines up on the timeline. I was so shocked at how much Infinity War and Endgame conversation there was.
Yeah.
Because the problem is that took place the first few things going on in Phase 4. The first few shows, first few movies. Those were related to, you know, what happened in Endgame, especially, but Infinity War as well. We got that in WandaVision. We got that in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Loki. We literally we got them in all of that. We have been moving further and further away. Now, Hawkeye, granted, there is part of that in there as well. But for the most part, we've been moving away from it. Having us almost more than a year out from where Phase 4 has started, and having this film come out just seemed weird that there were so many things to Infinity War and Endgame when we've already had bigger things happen.
Well, and not to mention, like, I could almost understand having such a tie to those films if you're talking about a direct character reaction, which you were in Doctor Strange, right? But if this had been his first appearance since Infinity War and Endgame.
Well, that's what I mean.
And it wasn't. You know, we've seen him previously, so why was he not more... And I get that it wasn't his movie, whatever, but why were we not seeing these kind of, like, obviously it's all about his guilt and the decision he made to have everyone die and come back. But, you know, why were we not seeing some of that happen in No Way Home? I don't understand. That part, it just, from the get-go, I think that's what started it for me. When it immediately became clear that, like, it was not actually about No Way Home and it wasn't going to be. I think you could tell that in the first 10 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
From then on out, I think that's when I disassociated. I was like, I don't understand anymore because you've completely turned what I thought this movie was going to be about on its head, and not in a pleasant way, in a way that is, like, really, like, disjointed from the rest of what's happening in your universe.
Yeah, I mean, I've genuinely decided that I, in my own mind's timeline, is going to put Multiverse of Madness in front of No Way Home. Just for me to feel like I make more sense. Because it doesn't feel as if it is a follow-up to your point, because we had Doctor Strange in No Way Home, and he played a very prominent role. He wasn't just a small role, and it was all about the multiverse. Well, and like I said, we'll get more into the multiverse in our next episode, but the only multiverse stuff that we were getting was because of America. It wasn't because of the multiverse being an explosion of, like, oh no, it's open, oh no, we've got all sorts of problems coming. Like, that was not the problem.
To your point, you could literally place this in front of No Way Home and it would not make a difference. If they came out in the timeline tomorrow and told me that, oh no, this actually takes place ahead of No Way Home, I would have been like, absolutely, I'm 100% aligned with that. Like, I can totally get behind that. You know, and I think what frustrates me the most, okay, not the most, but, like, it's definitely up there in my top 3 of frustration is, you know, we got WandaVision, they teased the multiverse. We got Loki, they teased the multiverse. We got No Way Home, they teased the When are we gonna actually fully see the multiverse that is not accessed by one person's powers? Her powers are cool. Don't get me wrong. Nothing against America. I loved her as a character. I thought she was awesome.
Oh, I thought she was awesome.
But she was a scapegoat. She was a little bit of multiverse. I want to see the full, oh crap, we broke everything. We've still never seen the fruition of what happened at the end of Loki come and actually bear fruit. When is that going to bear fruit and affect things?
And we essentially have gotten it pushed to now a Doctor Strange 3. Is essentially what has happened. And I know we'll get to there, but that is essentially what happened. And as far as the trailers
Listeners,
go...
I'm making angry faces at my computer. Like, I just can't.
I know. Before Taylor blows up, I'm gonna diffuse. So to end this, really, before we get... Because I know this entire conversation is gonna have a whole second part to it later. The trailers in general, besides the way that they marketed it, they showed everything. There were about 2 things, I think, that I was shocked about. There were 2 cameos that were I don't even want to say they were shocking, because at least one of them I kind of assumed. But there was about 1.5 cameos that I kind of was like, okay, that was cool. Didn't expect that. But also kind of did, because of research and just knowing who sits where. But also, you know, like I said, maybe within the whole film, there was like 2 genuinely shocking scenes to me, and we'll get into those. But the trailers spelled everything out. I knew what was going to happen in Comitage. I knew that. I knew what was going to happen in the Illuminati. I knew that because the trailers showed it.
Well, why were they showing me a full resolution shot of Maria Rambeau as Captain Marvel when that was one of the biggest debates that was going on in the fandom since trailer 2?
Mm-hmm.
So why would you take what is fueling your conversation online and within your fan group and saying, oh, well, now we're just going to confirm which ones of you are right, and we don't need you to even go to the film to be able to say, oh, well, I was right. 2, why would you show Captain Marvel? That would have been a great reveal. You are for the first...
Carter?
Yes, sorry. Too many captains. Too many lady captains. That's not true. They're all great. But for my brain's sake, too many lady captains, especially when I'm fired up.
Yeah.
But why would you show Captain Carter? She's, for the first time, we are seeing someone who is a direct relation to What If in live action.
Yep.
We didn't even get the real Doctor Strange from live action, or from What If that we thought we were going to get.
No.
Which is fine, whatever. But so she's the...
That wasn't the problem.
No.
Like, out of the whole list of things, that was not one of them.
That didn't even occur to me until literally it came out of my mouth 5 seconds ago. But she's the only character who has made that jump. That should have been something exciting, and it was, but that it was a surprise. I should have been like, oh my god, she's here. And the little hint you gave me in the glass was just enough to be like, she's coming. But then you showed me when and where she was coming, who she was fighting, and what she was doing.
Yep. Well, you know what? Let's bridge right into the cameos here, since we're right here. To your point, why did you show me Captain Marvel and Captain Carter? That was wasted. Fully wasted.
Especially when you also had showed me Professor X, the trailer before.
Yes. Listen, his voice in the first trailer was enough for me to have been like, whoa, and be excited. But then once again, you showed now he was the comic book accurate chair. So I was like, okay, so now we're seeing even more. Now I'm getting even more of what's going on. So 3 of the people that were already going to be major cameos, you gave me in the trailer. Okay, fine. But for a while, we were all already talking about it being Mr. Fantastic. Mm-hmm. And the only shock to that was finally that we got John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic.
Which was fantastic, by the way. I was so excited.
Oh, yeah. And I want to get into a whole point about people in different universes from a bridge from here, but let's finish the cameo point.
Yeah.
And then we had Black Bolt, which also was someone I kind of expected just because we do know he sits on the Illuminati.
I do want to go into that really quickly. For those of you who don't remember, and admittedly, I did not watch it either. I was not a huge Marvel fan at the time, or not enough to at least be bridging beyond the movies at that point. They did have that very ill-fated Inhuman show on ABC that was kind of meant to be, I think, kind of a sister show to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It went over very poorly, but I do think I remember some of the conversation being that Black Bolt was one of the bright spots. So I'm glad that they were able to bring that actor back and hopefully give him new life, whether that's on our universe or in other universes. I'm hoping this is not just like a one-off thing. I hope, because we got to see Black Bolt in action and that was pretty cool. So I hope we do bring that in. I hope then that we get more Inhuman stories being told, because the Inhumans are pretty integral to a lot of different stories. Ms. Marvel is actually an Inhuman, TBD on whether or not they bring that in as her origin story, but there's a lot of Inhuman underpinnings in a lot of different stories and in a lot of different origin stories especially, so I'm hoping that that is a sign of more to come as it relates to like Inhumans and Terrigen and all that cool stuff.
Yeah. No, and that's why I say there was 1.5.
Yeah.
Because I didn't fully expect Black Bolt. I was expecting a Mr. Fantastic. Didn't know which one we were getting, but I did expect one.
Yeah.
But that was it if you're talking about cameos. And granted, listen, I'm not going to lie and say we didn't expect more, because I think as fans, we all did.
And we have it on tape,
as far
Katie.
as cameos.
Like,
No, but I'm saying, I mean, you're going through the multiverse. I think everybody expected, and I'm going to quote exactly what I said in our blog post that came out literally yesterday before people were going to theaters. And I said, if they're showing us this stuff in the trailers, then there's got to be some massive stuff going on in this movie that's going to blow our minds even more if this is what they're willing to give us. And there simply wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, it's a logical thought to think, oh, they're giving us the small potatoes and they're hiding the big stuff.
Yeah.
And so, like, we had been talking just before we got on here and then realized we were spouting gold and needed to be, like, recording. But we were saying, it's easy. It's low-hanging fruit to bring in some of these cameos because you're going through a multiverse. So, like, in terms of storytelling, that's so easy to just be, like, popping in and then just bringing Chris Evans. I know logistically there's a little bit of stuff there. I'm sure right now he's filming other things. Not that it matters, they filmed this months ago, but, you have a long-standing relationship with some of these actors who can come back for a day, and I'm sure would be, they're still positive relationships, come back for a day, film their cameo, and be on their merry little way. And storytelling-wise, it would not detract from the story or feel like pandering because it fits naturally.
Yeah.
So the fact that they chose not to do it in a wider sense was frustrating. I'm not gonna lie. Like, is it one of the biggest reasons I was, like, a little frustrated with the film? No. But it's kind of like one of those, like, little sprinkle things where I'm like, oh man, like, you couldn't have done that either? Like, that's frustrating.
Well, I will say, I didn't expect the only time for me to be cheering for people for cameos was to be the Illuminati. I expected there to be another moment, and then it was only the Illuminati.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like, we got that with Spider-Man. We got Andrew first, and then we got Toby. It was kind of, like, sprinkled in, right? And then, and you got the villains from, like, our childhood and all that stuff.
Well, and then we got the big fight scene where we had all 3 Spider-Man come together and do their poses, and they're really iconic above the Statue of Liberty.
Exactly. And it was to your point, and how was I forgetting Matt Murdock? Like, throughout the film, these appearances were brought in, and they were, they kept you, not that the film itself didn't keep you excited, but they kept you excited. And then we got this one lump thing, and granted, that shot of them as the Illuminati, cool as frick. Like, I do not want to take away from that in any sense.
Yeah.
That shot, that's gonna live in my head rent-free for a long, long time. But that was to your point, the only thing. Like, why did I not get a scene where they were just, like, flying through the multiverse a couple times, and, like, there's Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, and, like, there's Ghost Rider. Like, what are we doing?
Or, like, anybody. Like, it could be anybody. Yeah, I genuinely didn't expect the Illuminati to be it, and I think I also kept waiting for there to be something, like, somebody else to pop up, and then there really never was. I wasn't even expecting someone directly. I just was expecting anyone. And it was just the Illuminati. And so I was a little shocked by that. But I do want to, since I kind of brought it up, talk about the John Krasinski thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Because obviously this was huge. I mean, this got the type of as soon as Christine, and we'll get to Christine, I'm sure, as well, brought up the Baxter building or the Baxter program.
Can we pause for 1 second? Because there was something else in Christine's little dialogue with Doctor Strange that I want to point out that got me really excited, and some people in my theater I could tell who were, like, the big nerds also got excited when she was numbering the universes.
Oh, yeah.
She was like, we're number blah, blah, blah. And then she said, and we call yours 616.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it's finally, like, movie canonical. Like, this is so exciting.
Oh, yeah. I was, like, super excited. Unfortunately, my roommates were like, what's going on? And I was like, I can't explain this right
I heard
now.
someone else, like, ask the question, and someone was like, in the comics, like, our Earth is 616.
Yeah, exactly.
Love the in real-time education.
Yeah, but to bring up John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic. Now, this is a question, actually. And now I'm going to start it with talking about Spider-Man, and that's going to be brought up, I'm sure, a lot throughout all this, but obviously I understand our Spider-Men are different. For the sake of what has happened, they were 3 different actors, obviously. They were 3 different franchises. But then we had Loki as well, which also had Loki's all looking different. Now, what throws me off is we established this in Doctor Strange that almost everybody seems to look like themselves in different universes, which was weird to me. Because now I have to question, is this full confirmation that John Krasinski is our Mr. Fantastic or not? Because I'm like, what was this?
Yeah, no, that's something that is genuinely causing me anxiety, because I could see this, to your point, going one of 2 ways.
Yeah.
They could go the Loki route, where we get a totally different dude, and this was just a one-off cameo.
This was like a fan service.
Yeah, and everybody's gonna be annoyed for the rest of eternity, like they were with Pietro and WandaVision. Like,
yeah.
Which, by the way, we got neither one of those either. So, I'm, like, apparently very salty. So, you could go that direction. Or you could go the direction of Stephen Strange, which obviously every single one of them was played by Benedict Cumberbatch. So, Cumberbatch? I get his name wrong all the time.
Well, even same with Wanda's. All the Wandas were Wanda.
Yeah.
All of the Christines were Christine. So I was like, so we are, the Mordos, like, even, like, the Peggy being Peggy, Maria, everybody was accurate to our universe, and they were establishing essentially with all the Stranges and all the Christines and all the Wandas that the whole point of it was they were all the same.
I'm gonna put out a theory for you.
Go off.
So, Spider-Man aside, because to your point, there were logistical things why they couldn't all be the same actor. So I don't think you can use that as a basis, just because that was already built in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at everyone who's the same, it's basically everybody but Loki, essentially.
Which I also was thinking about, because Loki is
a shapeshifter,
gender
fluid, all of those things.
Yeah.
So Loki on any given day could be an alligator, a woman, a man, non-binary. It doesn't matter. So if that character can be in so many different forms, then I guess it makes sense that across different universes, that Loki might choose to live in a different form than the Loki that, like, Tom Hiddleston plays and that we're familiar with.
Right. Well, that's what I was kind of trying to think but and I understand with Spider-Man logistically, I do, but because that is now canon, how that had to happen, that's kind of the problem in my brain.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, are we confirmed to have John Krasinski now as our Mr. Fantastic in Fantastic Four when it comes, in a few years? Or
which, by the way,
was it a fan service?
But just a quick pause on that, and then I'm going to react to what you just said. News that came out this week, John Watts, who we all know has famously directed the Spider-Man trilogy, is no longer attached to the Fantastic Four movie.
I did see that.
Disappointing, because I really enjoyed what he did with the Spider-Man trilogy, so I hope they get someone really good to replace him, because those are going to be big, big shoes to fill, especially after No Way Home. Tangent aside, going back to John Krasinski, I think if they're going to keep it consistent, you have to make it John Krasinski. To your point, everybody else has been the same besides Loki and obviously Spider-Man. I think it's with Spider-Man, it's like one of those things where you just kind of have to like understand it's going to be a plot hole and just let it go, Mm-hmm. So I do think it's going to be the same also for the reason of like the fans are going to be really unhappy if they cast someone else in this role now that we've seen John Krasinski. It'd be one thing if you had done this cameo and you had zero plans for Fantastic Four on the horizon, and then 15 years later you cast someone else. But I think because they have those plans, they're solid. Yes, they lost a director, but we know the movie's coming.
Yeah.
I think because of that, this choice was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to think that he's going to take on that mantle moving forward and in our universe. Fingers crossed.
No, definitely. And that's what I'm hoping. And since we're kind of talking about some of the Illuminati members, I want to bridge into Mordo. Because no problem with him in this film.
No.
The problem is he wasn't in this film.
Actually, yes, and I have a problem with that, but at the same time, if you go back to our predictions episode, it solves a problem that we had, which was how did Mordo get hooked up with the Illuminati?
Oh, no, that's 100% valid.
Yeah.
That isn't the problem for me. The problem for me is this going to become a forgotten storyline?
Yes, I was literally just talking to my roommate about this.
Well, let's give context. Hold on. Let me give some context, because I think we skipped a little bit there in that
conversation.
Yeah. But for those of you who I'm hoping you watched the first Doctor Strange. Obviously, our Mordo in our universe decided nobody should have magic anymore. And he made that decision, and he, for that reason became the bad guy. Arguably, is it a bad decision? No, he's kind of sympathetic villain. We kind of get it. But that was an end credit scene in Doctor Strange, the first one. Obviously, in the trailers, we were assuming this would be our Mordo just because we made a safe assumption in our mind. Just because he got a little bit of a different look didn't mean much.
Especially given his animosity against Steven. It made sense that it would continue from the first movie. Yeah,
so it didn't faze me to think that he would be involved. But I know, to Taylor's point, we brought up how did he get roped in with the Illuminati, especially because we didn't know how the Illuminati was exactly working. Clearly it worked in this timeline, not necessarily an overarching thing.
Which we also thought at one point, which was kind of debunked.
Yeah, but my biggest problem with this now is we had a Mordo, but he wasn't our Mordo, which means that the Mordo that lives in our universe is still out and about, stealing magic away from people, doing his thing, and now we've already set up for Doctor Strange 3, which is bound to be more hectic, and we'll get into the end credit scene, but is bound to be more hectic than this film was. Don't even ask me how, and I don't know how they'd fit Mordo into that either.
Yeah, no, I agree, because I think if you do that then, where you do try to fit him in because you realize you've left a plot thread hanging now for 6 years,
longer in the MCU.
Oh, yeah, true, because it's only 7.
Still longer.
I know, but I'm just saying we're almost caught up. We're almost there.
Which is good.
Yeah.
But especially at the time when Multiverse of Madness was first announced and all that, it was being a thread that was hanging out there because all of us already assumed Mordo wouldn't be in it because it was the multiverse.
Correct. So I think you run into the same potential issue if you try to shoehorn him into a movie that's going to be arguably bigger. It's still a man on a very personal mission in a movie in which there's a multiverse and 1,000 other things happening, and we'll get into Charlize Theron's character, and I'm sure at another point. I don't want to dig into it too deeply now, but and characters that are from other universes and doing crazy things and have all these powers, and not that Mordo doesn't, but he's working it on a much smaller scale, and those things just don't...
Mm-hmm.
Those are the same arguments we made for this movie, so why do we think that, why does anyone think it's going to work in another one?
Exactly.
But at the very least, give me some sort of throwaway line, like, would I love that? No, but at least give me some sense of closure for what the heck is happening with this guy who's just out here trying to take people's magic.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I was like, okay, so that's cool and all, but what about our Mordo? I was like, what about this storyline? Because granted, it could possibly be written in slightly that maybe he was dusted, and that did affect some of it as well. Granted, Doctor Strange was dusted, so he could have very easily part of Mordo's thing. I mean, if Mordo wasn't dusted, but Doctor Strange was, it was like, well, clearly he can't come for Doctor Strange.
Yeah. Because
he's not here. Or he himself could have been dusted, and that also puts a slight issue into his plan because he's not on any planet. He's just off world completely. So I could have argued that, but then it was like, that still gives, 2016 to 2023? I mean, that still solidly gives a good 4 years for him to have been semi there, even if he was dusted, to have been doing everything he was doing.
2 years.
Well, I was thinking 3 because I didn't know where we were after, like, how far out from Endgame we are. So we could be almost a year out at this point. We have no clue. Which is a whole other thing I'm sure we can get into at some other point, which has been a big complaint for us with Phase 4, I know. So yeah, I don't want it to become a thing that's just kind of been forgotten, and I don't think Marvel usually has done that, but I'm getting worried about this franchise for that reason.
No, for sure, especially because it'd be one thing if he was just a character who just kind of, like, stopped being involved, but, like...
And went, like, AWOL and just kind of did his own thing?
Yeah, but it was so clear the way that it was set up that he was supposed to be the villain. And so, like...
Well, and it's comic book accurate.
Correct. And then you bring the actor back, which no complaints.
Oh, yeah.
I think I've been very clear on my absolute love of Chiwetel Ejiofor. But, you bring the character back in another form, and it's immediately clear that, like, we're not dropping at least the notion of this character in the MCU, but we're just dropping the 616 version, even though he was set up as a bad guy. And I think, truthfully, it's one of those things where, they switched directors, obviously, from the first movie to the second movie, but also, I think when the first movie was kind of created, think all the way back to 2016, yes, they probably had plans for the multiverse, but I think that I don't know that they were as formed as they maybe should have been, especially when you're involving a character such as Doctor Strange, because he's so integral to those types of storylines.
Right.
So I think perhaps the plan was for him to stay a little bit more small scale for another movie before really opening up him to the multiverse and the kind of more grand scale things he can do and is involved in. And then those kind of got accelerated when the MCU moved almost immediately from the events of Endgame into a multiverse. Whether that had to do with the pandemic or not, TBD, I'm not inside Kevin Feige's head, but, so that kind of maybe was accelerated, and then it was like, oh crap, well, we kind of set him up for something that's a little more small potatoes, but we really want him doing the big stuff, so I don't know how we're gonna fix this, but let's just kick the can down the road until we can figure out a way to, like, quickly and easily put a bow on this and move him along to the better stuff. Not that, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree, and that's kind of why, like, that crossed my brain when we saw Mordo from a different universe, and so I just wanted to bring that up since we still don't know where ours is. But maybe we should crack the egg, stop avoiding the elephant in the room and talk about my girl Wanda.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Okay, since we're kind of coming off the cameo conversation, let's talk about how she ripped through the Illuminati like butter through a knife. Because...
Oh, no, wait, let me just say this. For everybody who always argued who the strongest Avenger was, you literally can't anymore.
Yeah, no, Sam Raimi, I'm pretty sure, said we'd have an answer after this movie, and he was pretty unequivocal about who he thought it was. So.
Yeah. She literally single-handedly just, Professor X, bro, she killed him in his mind.
I was, like, so horrified. I honestly felt sick. I was like, oh my god, okay, let's just one by one talk about the murder of these people.
Black Bolt, bro.
Was disgusting and horrifying. I literally, like, I was wearing a mask and I was like, you cannot have a baby vomit right now. Like, oh my god.
You know what? And I think I said this earlier in the podcast episode, there were about 2 things that genuinely shocked me, and the deaths and the goriness of them were what shocked me, because I think the gore in general shocked me, but how they happened. Black Bolt, oh my god, I just was like, what just happened? I'm also just gonna really quick skip over Mr. Fantastic because I do need to say, I have never been more pleased than to watch Captain Carter get cut in two by her own shield. I have never been happier.
Oh my god, I would just like to say, for all of you Captain Carter fans, while I don't think of her as my favorite, I do not hold the same vitriol as my co-host. I'm a little more in the neutral camp. Neutral to negative because I don't love... I'm a Steve girl, so, whatever. But I did not think, oh yay, she just got cut in half by her own shield. That's a solely Caitlyn impression.
No, from the get-go, after Black Bolt and Mr. Fantastic went, I said, okay, now get Captain Carter.
You're terrible. You're terrible.
I was like, let's go.
No, Black Bolt, okay, honestly, when she, did that thing with his mouth, I was like, oh, that's horrifying. I'm claustrophobic. So I was just thinking about the fact of, not being able to breathe out of my mouth. I was like, oh my god, that's horrifying.
Well, do you normally breathe out of your mouth?
I mean, when you're talking, yes, but you imagine, the idea of not being able to open your mouth? I don't know. I'm claustrophobic. Like I said, just not being able to move parts of my body, freak me out, okay? So,
okay.
That in and of itself, I was like, we're diving into phobia territory here, Mr. Raimi. And then he, his head caved in, and I was like, I don't understand. And then it took me a minute to realize she literally made him kill himself.
Yeah.
I was like, horrifying. And then Mr. Fantastic was, not that gory because it's not like you saw all the blood, but, she literally shredded him.
Yeah.
Literally like a paper shredder. I was like, oh my god. And the fact that she asked him if he had kids first and, if his wife was still alive, I was like, no.
Well, I desperately need to say this, since I did bring up Captain Carter's, decimation. But okay, well, first off, let me preface with, this was all because of the ending of Endgame that really got me angry.
I know, because I was gonna say, you did not feel this way about Peggy Carter until then.
Because she was just so, already written out of phases 1 through 3. She was, there, but not important enough anymore, and whatever, her legacy, whatever, it was, written out, and then all of a sudden they were like, ah ha ha, Steve still very much cares about her, even though, whatever, this is not that time. But, I will say, what is with Marvel and putting blood on the shield in phase 4?
I was so triggered. I was like, I feel like it's March of 2021 all over again.
No, I thought the same thing. I was like, who invited John? That is genuinely what went through my head.
John against Wanda? How amazed do you think Bucky Barnes would be for that smackdown?
Don't make me spit out my water, because you almost did.
You're doing great, John! As John's, literally demolished. That's a fun little headcanon for everyone.
Featuring our favorite, not-so-favorite Captain America.
I'm not gonna lie, though, I'm so excited to see him
as U.S. agent.
Yeah, and in the Dark Avengers or Thunderbolts or whatever he is. But yeah, so then we move on to Captain Marvel's death. Was not that gory. She was smashed by a...
It didn't really make sense.
It was kind of anticlimactic because she's such a powerful character. No matter who plays her, whether it's Carol or Maria, she's powerful. She's the only one who really, I think, can hold a candle to Wanda currently in the MCU.
Yeah.
I was literally just saying it an hour ago about how the only person I think in the comics who can go toe-to-toe with Wanda is Dark Phoenix or Phoenix Jean Grey.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But in the current MCU, obviously we don't have her, so I really think Captain Marvel and whatever, whoever she is the only one. And so it was a little anticlimactic to just have her, crushed by a statue. I was like, that's kind of dumb, because she's really powerful.
Yeah, and actually, so we have a lot we're going to have to talk about with Wanda. But since we're talking about the power dynamic, I want to ask the question of, was there an overpowering problem? And I bring this up because obviously I love Wanda, and we know she's powerful as all heck, and we know ever since she's become the Scarlet Witch, she's even more powerful. But the thing is Marvel keeps building her up, and this fight scene essentially proved a lot to pretty much say, there is nobody who can go toe-to-toe with her.
Mm-hmm. Because
at the end of the day, the culmination of this movie, she stopped.
She had to take herself out.
Exactly. She stopped herself. So... My issue is now obviously if you're a comic reader, we know some of the direction where this can be going. However, is the MCU there yet for it to go there? Because you can't keep building her and utilizing her at this point. At this point, and granted, we'll talk about the ending once we talk more about her in general, but she's obviously not gone. We're gonna have more of her. But what are you going to do with her? She has been established to be as powerful as she is. She's essentially unstoppable. So you have to do the storyline in the comics that I think everybody's been pointing out on Twitter that we're moving towards, but we're not ready. And you can tell the MCU's not ready.
No, and to your point, and let's just say what it is. If you're going to go House of M, you need people who can actually stop her. You need people who can, actually have an equitable fight with her. And really, I think in this film, we saw the two people who were most likely in the MCU, because obviously, like I said, you don't have Jean, most likely in the MCU to be able to at least hold a candle to what Wanda can do. Doctor Strange literally couldn't even handle 5 seconds of her. He was just, completely demolished. Granted, he's not the Sorcerer Supreme at the moment, but even him and Wong together, they lasted, 5 minutes with her alone? No. And then Captain Marvel, too. And that was an angry Maria Rambeau. We've seen how intense Carol can get as Captain Marvel, just really going at people, a la Thanos. I mean, she was absolutely brutal, rightfully so, towards him. And Maria had she brought that same kind of level of anger and intensity to her fight with Wanda when she was like, get out of my universe. And even at her angriest and her most brutal, Captain Marvel couldn't do it, couldn't get the job done. So if you're talking about the two most powerful people in the MCU outside of Wanda right now could not stop her, then what are we going to do for any future appearances, and who's going to actually be the person who brings her off that ledge? Or stops her, really.
Well, that's kind of what I mean, and I think this was a concern I had going into this film. If she went pure evil, which we didn't know exactly what was going to happen yet, obviously, but it was a concern I had even saying, okay, well, if she goes evil again, is she going to come back from the edge? Or not? Are we going to keep flip-flopping her character or not? I think I'm getting a little confused by where we're standing on this table, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And she is, and that's why I bring up, was there an overpowering issue?
Yeah.
Is she getting too out of hand? And I wish I could remember what it was called. There is another, I'm sorry, I was trying to look for it while you were speaking. There is another comic book storyline that people have been discussing in relation to all of this.
Oh, it is in House of M? That was my assumption.
No, it's not House of M. And I cannot find it. There was an amazing thread that I was reading where people were sharing their thoughts and where they thought this was all going.
Well, then I have to ask, because that's kind of, to be honest, I do not follow her in the comics as much. So that to me is one of her most iconic runs, really. I think most people would argue that, but it's also one of her most famous. Do you think, based on the ending of this movie and based on what this movie did for her, that we're gonna get House of M?
I'm not sure. I'm really not.
If, it isn't House of M and I don't know how they're going to even do House of M now based on what's kind of happened. I also truly need to do a little bit more background on it and see if there's a way to do it. But definitely, Katie, if you can find that thread at some point, you should, put that in the blog. We'll put that in the blog for you guys so you have it for reference.
I just can't remember the name of it. And it's bothering the heck out of me.
Yeah, no, I definitely know what you're talking about because I saw it too. I can actually picture the comic front that I saw online. But that actually leads me to another question related to Wanda. She clearly was not successful in bringing her children back. There was obviously more than one of them in the multiverse. That was something I think, admittedly, we were wrong about. But here's my question. If her kids are dead in this universe, and she's not going to go on a multiversal hunt again for her children, how the heck are they going to be in the Young Avengers?
Mephisto. And I'm actually not wrong.
I know.
So, part of the storyline, which I can't for the life of me remember, I'm so sorry, it will be in the blog, and I assure you it will be. There is also a storyline involving Mephisto and Ghost Rider, and obviously back in our WandaVision era, we talked a lot about how Mephisto is the way that Wanda has children. Well, typically, unless, we never saw a Vision in the other universe as Wanda, so maybe she had it with normal people. I don't know, a thing that's not like a microwave. But,
part human, part microwave.
Yeah, regardless, the question will be, are we going that far? And that's why I was saying, for what I know is going to come in that comic and where I do believe we are headed, we're not there yet for the MCU. So that's why Young Avengers is much further down the road than I think we anticipated it to be.
Agreed.
But I don't know, man. That was definitely a big thing to kind of see. And obviously we got to see all sorts of stuff going on with Wanda pretty much getting to the point where not House of M taking place, but if I could remember the name of this, which would be awesome, taking place instead, which would be a huge direction for the MCU to move towards. But as while we're on the topic of Wanda, I love her. And I'm going to preface this with every sentence I start with about her. But I will say, the biggest thing I hated was they cut the exposition of this movie. And so now I said earlier in the podcast, we had literally just binged the entirety of WandaVision right before the film. And we all know the end credit scene, and we all know how WandaVision ends. And we all have also the knowledge that the Darkhold obviously corrupts the person using it. However, at the end of WandaVision, she came out the hero. She still came out the hero. Granted, part of it was on her, but also just as much, she went to defeat Agatha. She was still the good guy. And we have the Darkhold corrupting her fine. But because they chose to cut the exposition, in my opinion, it felt a little too, black and white. From where we ended from WandaVision and the end credit scene to all of a sudden Wanda's like, ha ha, I'm gonna steal and kill this girl.
Yeah, it was jarring, and it was almost like I was watching a different character.
Yes, thank you. I said that during the film. I said I can't feel like this is our Wanda because I didn't feel where we got here. I felt her going crazy throughout the film. I got that. That was done amazingly. And Elizabeth Olsen did nothing but an amazing job, and this has nothing to do with her.
No, it's the writing.
It was 100%. And actually, this was another thing I said. I said, you had amazing actors, and not a single thing they did was wrong, but some of the writing was too weak in places for it to really have an impact. And this was, something we said about The Amazing Spider-Man years ago.
No, I agree. And it's very frustrating, to your point. It's actually so funny. A lot of what you're alluding to happens the last 10 minutes of the last episode of WandaVision, right?
Right.
And that's where I ended, really. I ended in my rewatch with her fighting Agatha and just having beat Agatha creating the runes. And because I think I had to go to bed. And I kept telling myself, I'll just watch it. I got busy. Literally, I'm in the elevator heading down to leave my building last night on the way to the movie. And I thought to myself, crap, I never watched the last 10 minutes of WandaVision. And I was like, whatever, it's fine, right? I'm sure I know enough. I get into the movie, I'm like, man, I really should have rewatched the last 10. Did I completely misremember what the last 10 minutes were?
No, you didn't.
And then I was like, because to your point, she flies off and it's a triumphant moment. She's not evil. Even when she has the Darkhold and you can see that she's definitely dabbling in some evil things, that's not when we see her, she's so far gone. She's so far removed. And yes, you can say, the Darkhold. Correct. But until you show me that.
But we didn't see it. All that happened off screen.